Hi, everyone. Welcome to the MarTech.org conference. We're very excited to talk to you today in this session about how to accelerate your marketing campaign execution with generative AI. And to join me in this discussion, I'm very excited to have Steve Armenti, who leads global demand generation at Google for Chrome, to talk us through some of from targeting to running customer journeys to measuring those customer journeys, how generative AI is helping in the account-based marketing space to actually accelerate that cycle. So Steve, welcome. Very excited to have you today.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, looking forward to chatting.
So I think to start, we'll just ground ourselves. Steve and I have been working together for a while, the co-founder and co-CEO of a company called GrowthLoop, and we've created a customer journey platform based on the modern data stack. So companies are able to bring their data in the data cloud and actually run customer journeys directly from it and measure them. And what we've been seeing is we're in the midst of a cycle of how they segment their customers, how they create the multi-channel journeys, and then how they measure them. And generative AI is touching each of those pieces as we go through those operational components. We're lucky enough to work with several different customers in this capacity, and we have over 1,000 marketers working on this with us today. So I'd love to set this up and make it very practical. So what we're going to do today is we're actually going to walk through real B2B use cases where you're setting up campaigns in your segmentation and how to think about that. And then we're going to go through one, how do you actually automate that process? But two, how do you bring generative AI to it? So, Steve, I'd love to start out a little bit with your vision for ABM. So starting with the strategy components around segmentation and then leading through creative, how do you accelerate your teams? But to start, let's just go through the account-based marketing vision you've laid out for your team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as we think about ABM, it's been a really key activity for us in enterprise. And so there's really three components I like to think about, and that's empowering each function across marketing to have the ability to target high propensity audiences that we determine are most likely to engage and purchase our products through a cohesive cross-channel strategy. And what that really means is allowing marketers to do this in a self-service way. So marketers need to be able to go into a central location, build audiences, do this at scale, do it quickly, and activate on the channels that they seem fit based on the goals of that campaign. And as you could imagine, any good ABM strategy is going to have a multitude of campaigns at play. So you might be doing lead gen, you might be doing paid search, webinars, email marketing, etc. And it's important that you're delivering a cohesive experience and message within each of those channels to that audience. And of course, in today's pace, everything needs to be fast. We need to be able to build audiences, activate those audiences quickly, and do that at scale across a number of different campaigns.
What I think is really interesting about this framework is you're speaking about it and your team works in the B2B context. In a lot of ways, this will apply to B2C marketing as well. As it fundamentally says, I need to start with a target audience. Then I need to orchestrate messaging to them across channels. And I need to set up the systems and the data layer to do this quickly so I can experiment faster.
Exactly.
And so that works great in this, in the B2B channel context, and it can also work in B2C, which makes it very powerful.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's essentially modern marketing at its finest, right? That's where we're all headed towards. In developing any good ABM strategy, there's going to be a number of barriers that you face. These are a few that I've experienced over the years, and we've proactively tried to solve as we've gone along this journey. And the first is lack of access to data and the resources to be able to access that data. And so if you think about your average marketer, especially a campaign marketer, maybe a field marketer, somebody who's focused on a specific channel, they're a bit more verticalized. Their goal is to drive growth or some sort of KPI within their space, their place in the funnel. And so oftentimes being able to accurately access data, take action on data, aggregate data, isn't a skill set that the average marketer has. And so they're reliant on tools that make that work easier for them. The second one is really like getting your house in order. If you're going from a siloed approach where you've got multiple activities happening across different channels and maybe your team is a bit disjointed, you're going to have this conflict in market, and you're ultimately going to confuse your prospective buyer, and you're not going to get the right kind of feedback that you want from these campaigns. So, first step in this part of the journey is really getting your house in order, making sure that your messaging strategy is going to be consistent across all of the different campaigns and channels. And then lastly, I think this is more of an internal pressure. As you're building out ABM, you're naturally going to create some excitement within the organization, and you're going to feel this pressure to deliver this now, and you're going to feel like you need to land this ABM strategy and start to show results quickly. But make sure to change that narrative internally around a long-term play. ABM is really a structure. It's almost a way in which your marketing team is going to operate. And so the earlier you can get in front of that narrative is most important. It'll give you the runway to be able to properly execute your ABM plans.
And I think this slide's super important. It's basically you have to get the foundation right, especially if we're going to be talking about generative AI. And I think it's one of those things where generative AI can be magical, but only if you do your homework. And so if you do your homework and you have the data layer right, you're thinking through a multi-channel strategy, then generative AI can be magic for your team. If you don't, it doesn't solve all of that. As much as you'd want Gen AI to be a genie in a bottle that comes out and solves all your infrastructure issues as well, it won't be. But if you have the right infrastructure, it will supercharge your team. So I think the thing that's super powerful about this strategy is it says you got to get the data foundation right. And that's absolutely essential to running multi-channel campaigns, first of all, but then second of all, actually, if you want to take advantage of the benefits of generative AI and the speed that it brings to your marketing, you can only do that if you get these fundamental things right. So I think this is a good basis to start our discussion down that route. But first, let's talk about how to set up your targeting and how you think about that, Steve.
Yeah, for sure. This is where it starts to get fun. So you've got your ABM strategy laid out, you've got the vision laid out, you understand why you're investing in ABM. Now becomes the how. And I always like to start with target accounts. So these are the accounts that you've agreed with sales and your go-to-market partners that you're going to target. And it gets really interesting when you start getting into which accounts, the demographics and the firmographics of those accounts. So you want to pay attention to this list and make sure you've built in taxonomy of this list so that later on you can start to get value out of different segments and portions of that list. And so naturally, as you progress through from accounts, the personas are the who within these accounts that you want to target. These are the specific buying personas or the groups of buyers that you're looking to target. And ideally, you would have some signals, either first party or third party, indicating who your ideal customer profile is and who this persona should be. And then mapping those existing leads that you have in your account to the target account list that you've built. So those two things work hand in hand with each other. And then lastly, this is where we actually get to take action and be proactive with the upfront research we've done with the accounts and personas. And these are your segments. So these could be a small category of buyers within, say, a certain industry, within a buying group, perhaps based on historical behavior or performance or some sort of signal that you have that you want to run a personalized campaign against some sort of activity where you're trying to reach those specific segments and drive a certain KPI within your ABM program.
And I know one of the things you mentioned at the top, it's once you start creating these target segments, the fault I see with a lot of companies is they do this extremely slowly. They don't have an agile approach to doing it. And so one of the things I know we've partnered on together is how do you make this self-service for the marketers to be able to just create rich target account segments as well as persona segments that they want to target with those cross-channel campaigns. And so right here you can see GrowthLoop's interface that it makes it easy to self-service, drag and drop, and create those customer segments on the data so that they can move quickly. And I know, Steve, one of the important things for you was to open this up beyond just the data team and get it into marketers' hands.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And you know, I can speak a bit about typically this process is very manual. It's emails, it's spreadsheets, it's meetings, it's talking to the sales teams. And if you have a large sales team, you might find some internal conflict around building that target account list. Sales often has their version of a target account list, and then there's the version of that list that marketing can actually target. And so at the end of the day, all of that ultimately needs to get into the hands of the marketer, and it needs to be actionable. And so when you're managing out of a spreadsheet and you've got a target account list of a few thousand accounts that you're targeting, it becomes really difficult to go and action that across different channels. And, like most B2B enterprises, they're probably engaging in 5, 6, maybe more channels at any given time. And so trying to coordinate a cohesive targeting approach to an account list across all of those channels, and you might have multiple partners within each channel you're working with, that becomes really, really complicated. And so having an interface where you can go in, easily build those lists, you can segment that list, you can build lists off of the list, becomes really, really important and helps drive that scale and the agility that we're all looking for.
Yeah, and I feel like self-service marketing software, extended data, like the ability to create segments beyond the data team to the marketing team, which is great for acceleration. But, of course, we wanted to talk today a little bit about how generative AI can accelerate this even further. And the way I see it is like, well, generative AI should actually, the manual process you were just describing about going back and forth with the analyst team was table stakes. Then we made it self-service so marketers could go in and do it themselves. But still, marketers need to understand a little bit about the data to know what signal to pick and what filter threshold. And a lot of times marketers are just creating a marketing brief and describing who they want to target in their customer base. And what if generative AI could actually help you create the target segment? So what we're showing on screen here is a way for marketers, we call it MARV within GrowthLoop, is a way, in plain English, just describe your audience. And the generative AI is actually going to go write the SQL and present you an audience draft and report. But I think this is just scratching the surface of what's possible with generative AI in terms of targeting. And so I've been thinking in terms of, Steve, like, does this extend the capability for your teams of targeting, or how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I think it actually brings the reality we want from account-based targeting. I think oftentimes ABM is really just, it's what it's defined as. It's marketing to accounts. And that's not really what we're after. What we're after is personalization. We want precision. We want to reach the right companies, the right people at the right time, and be able to drive pipeline and opportunities for sales. And so I think Gen AI in this use case is getting marketers closer to the data and then giving them the controls to be able to say, okay, based on a hypothesis I have or some insights that I have, I'm going to go and target these specific accounts with this specific message, and I'm going to do it, over this course of time through these channels and tactics. And it makes it real. I think it actually delivers the promise of ABM more so than we've ever been able to do with kind of traditional ABM tactics.
It almost feels like Gen AI is starting to move technology out of the way. It's like all the dashboards, all the SQL queries, everything we've been doing to date has been like technology in the way. It's just starting to remove it. Like, I know you and I have talked about some use cases. Like, what if you just say, I want to target every stage 2 sales opportunity where the contact is likely to buy this product that I'm coming out with, and it generates the audience. Like, that starts to get into a way marketers would think is like, hey, I want to accelerate my funnel. You just tell me who I have the best chance to accelerate my funnel with right now for this product.
Exactly. Yeah, and you go from, communicating with, your average marketer communicating with a technical data person can be a challenge in itself. And so, the data folks are good at what they do and the marketing folks are good at what they do, but sometimes getting them to align on the exact execution is difficult. And so this just puts it right in the hand of the marketer, and they can say, I know what I want to do. Like you said, I want to accelerate, SQLs in the pipeline in the manufacturing industry. You can go right in and prompt and be able to do that. You have your audience, and then you're off and running.
Yeah, it almost like, I think what could get interesting is this starts with describe your audience, I'll go find it. It could go to, like you're talking about, tell me your goal and I'll find you the audience. So my goal is to do X. Now go figure out the audiences to satisfy that I have the best chance of achieving that goal with.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for sure. Speak here, the next point in this journey as you're developing your ABM playbook is coming up with an integrated campaign framework. And you could call this an omni-channel campaign. Really what this is bringing all of the components together. And again, starting with the target accounts and the personas. This is the who that we're going to target. And then you start thinking about, okay, where does this audience typically play? Where do they live? Where do we want to reach them? And those are your channels, right? That's paid search, it's display, it's lead gen, content syndication, your website, etc. This is where those messages are going to live on an ongoing basis. And then lastly, how are we going to really get that message in front of them and into their hands? And these are the tactics. So I'm excited about the future here because as we think about a ideal journey, that's ultimately what we're trying to design. And this process here has been fairly manual for a while. And there's been automation. There's ways to automate certain steps, but not at the level that you've been talking about, Chris, where you say, you look at something like this and you say, my goal is to get people to attend a webinar, because that to my business is a sales qualified lead. And then all of the things prior to that are essentially given to you or provided to you in a framework. And then you as the marketer can go and piece them together and build the right flows and journeys. And so the exciting part, I think, is taking something like this, which marketers, we all spend hours and hours building these ideal customer journeys for our campaigns, sometimes multiple. Imagine a world where those journeys are provided to you and you're working towards a goal. You're essentially informing what the end goal is.
Yeah, it almost becomes, especially for journeys like this one we're showing, a typical journey going from paid media to an email nurture program to a webinar or something to get that person's information before they become an opportunity. You think about, we were talking about in terms of Gen AI with targeting, you say the goal, you get the audience. It's interesting when Gen AI becomes, you say the goal, you get the audience, you get a proposed journey. Now the marketer can obviously edit that journey because they know best and they know their customers best. But at least they should get a proposal to get started. And I know a lot of this that your team's done, this has been really innovative work that you've put together these end-to-end journeys because it's not easy today. You need to coordinate all the teams and put together the briefs. And I think Gen AI could potentially help that in the future.
Yeah, I agree. You think about the manual process of creating these, and we've used a brief, as you mentioned. So the brief has really become this forcing function to get the different groups of marketing together towards one goal. And just in this slide alone, I can tell you there's 4 teams represented here, right? And getting 4 teams to work well together towards a cohesive journey like this is a challenge in itself. And so, having something to consolidate that, whether it's a brief or it's Gen AI created brief or, format, is going to be really profound for marketing. Again, just speeding things up, making things more efficient. And I think the other part here is, if you think about the kind of classic way of doing this, you take your best guess at building this prospect journey, you go and you execute it, and you start measuring the conversion points at each step in this journey. And then you look and you see, okay, this one's below 10%, this one's above 40%. And you almost get these false signals that, oh, this one isn't performing well because it's below average. But perhaps it's actually just the segment. You delivered the wrong journey to the wrong segment. And so, knowing that up front is going to unlock all sorts of efficiency that I'm excited about.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to, we were talking about segmentation. If you're not agile with segmentation, then journeys is going to be impossible for you to be agile on. And a lot of the teams we talk to, even if they can plan a journey, executing a journey has the same issue of the data problems just multiply significantly. So in this case, what we're showing here is very similar to what we talked through in audience targeting and segmentation, which is to build a journey with a canvas and a self-service tool. So in GrowthLoop, we enable the marketer to create customer journeys and self-service those so they don't need to go to the data teams and ask for 15 different segments predicated on each other. So I know this has been helpful to make the team more agile in creating journeys to date and trying to get that to the self-service for marketers. And I guess in terms of self-servicing for markers, is this the kind of iteration you're looking to give your teams on journeys?
This is what we're looking for. So, when I think about personalization, it's it's at that account level, it's at that persona level. And there's also an element of your brand, your message, you as the marketer, like what are you providing? What is the personalization you're providing? And I can speak to an example. We do a lot of solution-based marketing, and these are either specific verticals or specific solutions where we do well, and we're trying to ultimately understand the intent of a prospect as they flow through that journey, and then be able to personalize the next step based on maybe a previous behavior or some intent signal that we have. And so being able to do these journeys at scale iteratively is really profound, because you could imagine a solution-based campaign that's acquiring leads under an assumption that they're interested in that solution, but then maybe their behavior later on in the funnel changes. And in the classic world, you'd be continuing to deliver them that solution-based message that they were acquired on, but meanwhile, throughout the journey, they've become interested in something else. So being able to change those journeys and those messages in that factor is it's going to be fantastic.
And I think what is going to be interesting that happens next is, let's say you open up targeting and segmentation, you open up journey creation like we're talking about. The next bottleneck becomes, how do you develop all the creative for what you're doing? I see this all the time with brand teams. It's like, wait, you want to run how many segments and you want to run how many journeys? And I think this is where generative AI is going to play another big piece, is you go from segmentation to journeys to how do you scale your creative. Generative AI is very purpose-built for this next phase. Now, the question is how does it extend your creative team? And I think one of the important things is, if you go into Bard right now and you type in, hey, I want creative for my company, and for a churn win-back email, that's a generic prompt, and you're gonna get a generic answer back. And I think where this is heading, and where we're already starting to see this, is audience-based prompts. So what if you can take what, Steve, you've been talking about in terms of your target? Let's say you have 5,000 accounts that you're targeting. What is the makeup of those accounts? What industries are they in? What employee size are they in? Are they spending on technology similar to yours? If you can take those attributes and actually feed it to the LLM to generate creative, that's where I think this gets super interesting. And I guess in terms of your team, as you think about scaling up journeys, Steve, are you guys thinking about the creative elements as well, or how are you thinking about this?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I think everybody is thinking about creative and Gen AI, and we're really at the forefront here. And I would add that, to what you're describing, imagine Boeing is on our target account list, or any Fortune 100 company. And then you follow this process we've laid out. We've got Boeing, and we want to get in front of the CIO. We know who that person is. We know things like the content they consume. We can get third-party intent signals. Gen AI can scrape LinkedIn. I mean, there's all sorts of things we can do to try to build out the demographics of that persona and use that to be able to inform the creative. And then the next step that I'm really excited about is accelerating A/B testing. And so with channels like email and paid media, to be able to A/B test at scale quickly using all of those signals is, it kind of blows my mind to think about, and how we're going to actually manage those campaigns and how the KPIs are going to change. And we're going to start to be more focused on wrangling together all of those signals to build out the right persona target, and then just really let the technology do its thing and find us the best message, right? And depending on what the goal of that certain channel or tactic is.
Yeah, I think that's when it becomes incredible, is when you piece this all together, because you have the end goal and it backs up to the target audiences, that you can generate multiple different target audiences, you generate draft journeys, and then you can generate the creative along with them. Then you can A/B test to get what is reaching that ultimate goal. And I think that's a good segue to the final piece, which is measurement. And so I think in the measurement side, obviously generative AI is going to play a component, but just to actually give us a foundation for this part of the conversation, how do you think about measurement for the ABM campaigns you're running?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's funny because we often talk about measurement last, but it really should be discussed first as you're building out the ABM vision. You want KPIs and you want goals, and these are a few of the common ones. I think it's really dependent on your industry, your sales motion, your go to market activities. But with anything that we're doing around campaigns and omni channel activities, we're looking at the leads coming in, the efficiency of qualification of those leads into MQLs, the volume of MQLs created. Are we on track with the anticipated volume? And then more importantly, as we're optimizing within the funnel, are we driving the real conversion rate with sales? And for us, an SQL is the point in the funnel where marketing has said this is a qualified lead and sales has agreed. They say, yes, this is a qualified lead. We've made contact. We've done some kind of BANT call, run through, and we agree this is quality. And so that for us is a North Star, informing that, okay, these channels, these tactics are going in the right direction. And then, we also want to know, is this strategy, is ABM improving sales metrics? Are there more deals coming into the pipeline? Are those deals getting closed faster? Are we getting opportunities to sales faster, throughout the calendar year? And then looking at all of that together to inform, is what we're doing successful?
And I think in just like targeting and journeys and creative measurement, we're seeing a lot of this get automated of like the key metrics you just listed out, MQL, SQL rate. How do you do that for all of the audiences and journeys you're running becomes super important to start to automate this. And a lot of that work's happening in the data cloud because, again, if the marketer has to go on your team to a data person and ask for all these metrics on every single audience that you're running as you scale this up, it's not going to get the marketers the data they need in the time they need it. So that's exciting in terms of the automation. What's interesting, I think, next with generative AI is if you take those key KPIs, Steve, that you were just walking us through, AI is going to be the one summarizing the reports to help the marketing teams actually understand what's going on in those journeys and target segments that we're running. And so some of the interesting things we've seen coming out, these are coming out hot and heavy right now in the industry. But Tableau is a great example of what they've just launched. There's other BI tools launching AI components as well. But what they're doing is they're essentially looking across these metrics. And if you're able to define KPIs like SQL rate, MQL rate, what they can do is they can actually summarize reports when there's changes in those metrics. And so you are actually alerted and receive a summary report. Now, what I've seen that's kind of interesting is they're doing it in dashboards, which we're all typically used to. The one that's fascinating to me is they're also doing it in other channels. And so they're almost marketing to your marketing team to tell them the insights that are actually happening in your own journey platform. So like I saw this integration with Slack, and they have one with Microsoft Teams as well, where it becomes interesting where the Gen AI is actually almost feeding the team the insights about the system overall, which this is pretty wild. It'll be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the operational efficiency here, right? Like your average demand marketer in a medium large company, they're probably presenting this data weekly, bi-weekly, monthly leadership syncs. You've got QBRs going on. You've got first half recap, second half. A lot of your job becomes trying to make sense of the data and provide these insights, and doing that manually in like spreadsheets and presentations, and then you're attending a meeting. And so, you're gaining a ton of operational efficiency here with this capability. But then I also think about diagnostics, right? Where if you're an on the ground campaign manager and you're getting this information fed to you regularly, and you're being told this journey is underperforming, this one's overperforming, or this piece of content isn't converting at the rate that we would expect it to, and you can go and triage and make changes in real time versus waiting for your weekly wrap up report, or whatever your reporting cadence may be. And so it's speeding things up. It's making it easier. It's faster, more actionable. And I think honestly, just giving the marketer an ability to expand their role. They can be more strategic. They can go and do the things that they want to do at a strategic level, influencing stakeholders and whatnot, and less, churn in the day-to-day activities of managing this.
Well, it's interesting. Even as you were talking that through, I hadn't been thinking about it that way. I was seeing it as, reporting the way it's typically done, which is a readout a week later. Whereas if you're getting the insights this quickly, you're exactly right. You can be more agile. Like, you can intervene immediately. And so your iterative process just becomes so much faster. So I guess with that, I'd love to thank everybody for attending this session. Fundamentally underlying this session is the belief that Gen AI is here to transform marketing. But what's important in that is you look across targeting and segmentation, journeys, creative, and measurement, and trying to tie that full cycle together, is that you're grounded in the reality. And so, Steve, thank you so much for joining us to actually give us the tangible reality and the real use cases underlying this and how it gets done today. Because if folks are able to apply Gen AI to each piece in a practical way, that's when they actually accelerate their growth loop and can 10x the amount of experiments that they're able to do, which I think is where this gets exciting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well said. How do you 10x your ABM marketing, right? That's the goal. So thanks for having me. It's a great time. Always a pleasure talking about ABM and, now more conversations around AI.
Thank you for watching. Click the agenda link at the top of your screen to choose your next session.